Hello and welcome to Off the Press. Today's edition, Tuesday, the 18th of June 2019. It's a very good morning to you. We've got all of the major headlines and the major on all of the national dailies, and we're ready and raring to go with all of the stories and with all of the major headlines. And here in the studio, we've got a reputations manager, yes, in the person of Tubosun Akeju. It's good to have you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you. It's been a while that we've seen each other.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So I'll just take us through the papers, and then we'll probably start delving into each one of the headlines. So we've got Vanguard, we've got The Punch, we've got The Nation, and we've got This Day newspapers. We'll start with Vanguard newspapers, and I'll just take us through the headlines with that. We've got the major headline on the Vanguard newspapers is Moshood Apapa Expressway. No concrete plans to restore lasting sanity, and that's investigation. That story is on page 10. That's on Vanguard newspapers. Let's see if we can bring that up on your screen. There it is right there. No concrete plans to restore lasting sanity. And if we look at the very top, we can see just on the left-hand side, Entertainment Daily, page 11, and it's Ifu Eneda saying why she stopped talking about her rape experience. And next to that, we've got May Lafia, who says we have been quietly bankrolled a succession of Ghanaian leaders without preconditions and without asking anything in return. How I wish the love is mutual. The story is detailed on page 32. And to the right-hand side of that, we have 33 killed, dozens injured, houses burnt in triple suicide bombing violence in Borno and Taraba. That story is on page 8. And in the top right-hand corner, in pink there, world population now 7.7 billion, men outnumber women in Nigeria, and that story is on page 14. Underneath that, we've got ex-Egyptian President Morsi dies in court. That story is on page 52. Okay, let's look at the bottom of the Vanguard newspaper now. We've got a picture depicting the flag of ceremony for the reconstruction of Apapa Expressway in Oworonshoki or Jota Expressway in Lagos, with a number of dignitaries, including the former Lagos State Governor, Fashola, sorry, what am I saying? Yeah, and Dangote, and Ms. Hadiza, also the president of Dangote Group, including Dangote himself, and even Fashola as well, and a number of people there. At the bottom of the newspaper, we've got quite a number of stories, but because of time, I think we should delve deep into our main headline. So the Apapa Expressway. No concrete plans to restore lasting sanity. How does that tie in with the expressway itself?
I'm not really surprised about that headline, because I think the last time I had to discuss the clearing of the trucks, one of the major questions that I asked is, where are those trucks going to? When there's a problem, my own approach to solving problem is to go to the root cause. In the first place, why were they parking on the bridge? Do they have a trailer car park that is servicing what is perhaps the busiest port in sub-Saharan Africa? So if you don't have a trailer park, you don't have a process that is in sync with the movement of trucks from the trailer park to the port to pick up containers, to pick up goods, then we're going to have a problem. So it's just a matter of time. So if they leave the bridge, they'll go somewhere else and then cause havoc somewhere else. And the way the road networks in Lagos, they are connected is if there's a major, and it doesn't have to be a trunk A road, really. Sometimes if a trunk B road should have a problem, then you will be surprised how the traffic will spill across Lagos. Is amazing how it happens. So I'm not surprised they're saying, because if what you're trying to do is to clear up the symptoms and you do not take care of the root cause of the issue, the symptoms will showcase in another way. So I'm not surprised about that story at all. What I think government needs to do is to engage all the critical stakeholders. Look at the process. I think there's a process issue here. So because if you have, if we have a bit of specificity about the time that goods will come out from the port, then you can almost plan the number of days that a truck needs to be anywhere around the port. So if you do not have, if your goods are not coming out within perhaps, let's say, 3 or 4 days, you don't have any business to come and start hanging around there, because even if they create a trailer park for the trucks that are picking things up around there, it's not going to be limitless. That means it has a finite number of trucks that will be able to take. So if your goods is going to be picked up 7 days time and you don't have anywhere to stay, it's not a license for you to go and occupy that space. So I think there has to be a lot of process in place, which will not only rely on the trailer, just building the trailer park, but has to be something that is in sync with the process of the port. So I think that's what they should be looking at. I think they made significant gains in clearing them off the bridge, but it doesn't stop there, because if you don't fix that root cause of the process,
it will happen again.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you think that having a separate lane, specifically for them, will help in any way, shape or form, or that would be way too far-fetched?
I think it would be a very expensive way. I think that would be bringing a gun to kill a housefly, so to speak. Because instead of having a separate lane, we might as well just create a train that picks things up from the port and takes them out to the hinterland.
As opposed to using the trucks. That sounds like a better...
Yeah, I don't... I mean, that's in the first place, that's one of the reasons why we're having this problem, is because we do not have a very strong and well put in place 21st century mode of transport, of mass transportation or heavy-duty transportation. These trucks are heavy-duty trucks. They put a lot of pressure on our roads. That makes the cost of maintenance of that road high. I mean, that is if there's any.
Okay. All right. I think we're going to leave that there now and move on to another story. Let's talk about this one, which is at the top of the Vanguard newspapers. Nigeria attracts $10.65 billion foreign direct investment, and that's the Central Bank of Nigeria speaking. That's good, or?
Good news.
Okay.
Good news. I'm not trying to be a prophet of doom. I just think that we need to be careful about what I call vanity metrics. Okay. 10.65 billion in foreign direct investments in what sectors? How sustainable is the investment that have come in? It's very, very good news. But I think it's also very important for us to go beyond just throwing out these figures and saying that this is the impact of this figure in our economy. This is how we can attract more. What has helped us to attract? How do we keep and retain? I was having a conversation with the head of one of the countries that one of the companies trying to invest in Nigeria, the agri space, and you'll be surprised about the challenges it's facing. And clearly, the man is getting frustrated. And he's an African man who, well, arguably has one of, is representing one of the biggest agri firms globally in Nigeria, and saying that they've not started operations, but the Inland Revenue Service in the states where they're operating is starting to ask them for tax. So definitely the investment of that company is probably part of what the CBN is counting. But they've not even started operation, but they're already getting frustrated. So I think that beyond just having headlines like this, I think we need to, one, put processes and systems in place that helps us retain investment and make the best use of those investments. Number two, ensure that our ease of doing business is not just talk, it's really, really in place and people find it easy to do business in Nigeria. And I think number three, deliberate marketing of Nigeria. There are departments of international trades of other companies in Nigeria that if you see the level of active engagement they give to the players in the private sector, you wonder if the Nigerian government is even doing that internally, not to talk of externally. So I think that those are places to be. It's a good news, but I think that Nigeria with 200 million people can do better or do way better than this.
Okay, it's a perfect way to end that story, because we need to move on to the next one now, which is the Punch newspapers. Let's see what stories are available on that newspaper. We've got the Punch newspaper. Let's see if we can bring that up on your screen. There it is right there. We'll start from the top and work our way down. We've got inflation rate hits 11.4%. Full details of that story available on page 33. And underneath to that, we've got Oshun Poll. Adeleke insists on tribunal's verdict as as Supreme Court rules July 5. That story is on page 8. Next to that, we've got INEC must produce server used for 2019 polls, and that's Peter Obi speaking. That story is on page 13. The main headline is at the bottom of your screen there. Governor's failure to replace retired teachers threatens public secondary education. And underneath that, we've got, for your information, since 2009 till date, more than 7,000 teachers have retired in Ogun State without replacements. We have advised the government, but they are always complaining about funding. That's the Ogun NUT chair saying that. The full detail of that story is available on page 2. Let's look at the bottom of the Punch newspaper. There are a number of pictures there. Yes, and it's the Red Cross officials attending to victims of suicide bombings, which occurred outside a hall in Konduga, just 24 miles from the Borno State capital, Maiduguri. So pictures there. Underneath that, we've got quite a number of stories as well. Buhari mourns as suicide bombers kill 30 at Konduga viewing center. That story is on page 10, and underneath that we've got, from on the left hand side, Egypt ex-president Morsi dies during court session, page 18, and on the right hand side of that we've got Lagos APC faults Bode George over comment on Tinubu, and there are a number of other stories at the very bottom there. Okay, let's start with the major headline once again. Governor's failure to replace retired teachers threatens public secondary education. Do you think that would really be the case if they don't replace the retired teachers, that it will threaten public secondary education?
I think I think the threat is more than secondary or primary education. Okay. I think that the threat is socioeconomic. Okay. And I'll tell you, I was reading an academic paper coincidentally on Sunday, and what the posit in that paper, you know, in one of the Ivy League schools, is that if you have a population that is not educated, it becomes even a lot difficult for economic development in that environment. Much more difficult in our present time because we have a knowledge economy. So what it means is that, for example, let's talk about like two of the critical and perhaps the sectors that were growing even when there was what's it called? We had the economic issues in Nigeria, agric and technology. Without adequate education, people can make effective use of technology. So even if we create technology solutions that can help create efficiency and all of that in a society, if people are not educated, they can't take advantage of it, and then, you know, the purpose is lost. Agric, we can become globally competitive if we're not practicing, if we're not using best practices in agriculture. Mm-hmm. So if there is no education, then we're dead in the waters. It's sad to see that government is not replacing. At the same time, I also think that that job has not been made very attractive for people.
In terms of the benefits?
Yes, in terms of the benefit. My parents are teachers. My mom is a teacher. My father is a lecturer. I mean, both of them are teachers. My mom has always been a teacher. My dad has had to do both lecturing and, you know, moving across and all of that. And I think it comes from a place of joy. They kind of just enjoy doing it and all of that. Joy and passion. And passion. There's a bit of passion here. But if you look at it, again, in Oyo State, for example, and in many states in Nigeria, the teachers were held for many months. And I feel that if there's any sector where you should give extra attention to, these are the people you should give attention. So it's bad enough that the jobs and the remuneration on the jobs are not as attractive as they should be. But it's worse that, well, we don't even have adequate number, we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the system, the curriculum, a lot of them are outdated and all of that. So I think the problem is bigger than saying that, oh, it's going to affect only secondary. Oh, yes, it will affect secondary, but it will affect all of us
in the long run.
In the long run,
yes.
You know.
Okay, you know what? Let's quickly talk about Ogun State, because this story, I think it's particular to them, because like the Ogun NUT chair is basically saying that since 2009 that more than 7,000 teachers have retired in the Ogun State without replacements whatsoever, you know, and that they've advised the government, but that they're always complaining about funding. Do you think, you know, apart from, you know, the benefits that we said that is accrued to the teachers, I think there's a case of I don't know. I think it hasn't been given the appropriate priority.
It's deprioritized.
Exactly. I think that's the word.
Yeah, it's actually deprioritized. And Ogun State is the one in the spotlight. I can bet you, if you check majority of the states in Nigeria, you find that that's the same problem. You know, again, some analysis not too long ago showed that we actually even, when you look at the bigger problem of the Nigerian education sector, we're focusing a bit on the wrong thing. Because if you have strong foundations at primary and secondary school level, tertiary education becomes more optional, and people are well developed to make good use of whatever they've learned at primary and secondary school to continue in life.
So that means getting the
basics, the foundation has to be strong. So I think it's just Ogun State. I think the problem perhaps might not be as big as it has been highlighted in this news in other states, but the problem definitely exists in those other states. You know, I'm sure that this problem exists in other states because I mean the teachers are old, like I said, and there are all the many issues of infrastructure and all of that people really you know have to deal with. And I think that government across board, you know, must pay particular attention to education because, you know, the lack of attention or deprioritizing that sector is a ticking time bomb that has a domino effect you know, across all parts of society. All
right then, Tubosun, let's leave that there because we need to move on. I want us to quickly talk about this before we leave the Punch newspaper, which is like the first story on the Punch newspaper this morning, the inflation rate. This affects everyone, you know, so let's quickly talk about that. It hit 11.4%. Is that good? Is that bad?
Definitely, inflation is never a good thing. And like one of the industry leaders said at an event about 2 weeks ago, that the policymakers usually find it very easy to drive inflation from 18% down to like 11, 12. But then to bring it to single digits then becomes a problem. The inflation, unfortunately, this has increased month on month by I think 0.03%. 0.33 might sound a bit insignificant, but I think it's something that has to quickly be nipped in the bud because there's so much economic. When you look at people at the bottom of the pyramid, there's so much, let me put it in plain language, suffering in the land, you know, and all of that. I don't think it's the time for the prices of food to go up. Anyway, if there's any option we have is for it to, you know, go all the way down. And I think the policymakers, you know, from different sides must start to do the things that, because that's part of the reality of our society, to do things that will make at least the basics of life cheaper for people, food, shelter, you know.
You see, what do you think can be done actually, you know, to reduce that inflation rate to a single digit?
Sincerely, I think that we need to stop being a consumer-based country. Every time I see malls springing up everywhere, I get very, very worried. While, you know, in the immediate term, it looks like, oh, it's more jobs for people. They're going to employ people to build the malls, to employ people to, you know, to work in the malls. But the question is, when you enter those malls, a large percentage, sometimes up to 70% of what is sold in that mall are not made in Nigeria.
Okay.
Do you understand? So I think that those are problems. So we need to start producing more of the things that we consume instead of importing them. And it goes back to the issue of how easy
and
it
more
is to
qualitative, I would say,
exactly.
because Nigerians have the preference thing if it has to be of high quality, otherwise they're not going to be interested.
Yes, there has to be a lot of trust to buy quality.
Okay, our next newspaper now is The Nation. We've got The Nation newspaper up next. Let's see, do we start from the bottom or from the top? Let's start from the top. There are quite a number of stories there. Let's start from the top left-hand corner. 920 held for murder and kidnapping, says IG. That story is on page 7. Why, and underneath that we've got why UI can't admit all applicants by the VC. That's on page 40. To the right hand side, also at the top of The Nation newspaper, we have US no student visa ban on Nigeria. Dangote Cement eyes $700 million forex. Ex-Egyptian President Morsi dies. France beats Super Falcons via penalty. That story is on page 47. Okay, in this very center of your screen there, we can see to the right hand side, CBN to close bank accounts of firms importing forex restricted goods. And at the bottom of your screen right now, we've got the major headline for The Nation newspaper: 900 billion naira probe. Senators, reps to return fake projects funds. Let's look at the bottom of The Nation newspaper now, because that story continues, that we can see on the top left-hand corner there in red: ICPC to verify constituency projects in states. And also on the left-hand side, we have at the bottom left-hand corner, we've got 30 dead, 40 injured in suicide attack. Okay, let's start with the 900 billion naira probe. Yes, you smile, you laugh, you know. What's your initial reaction?
I've said it time and time again that one of the ways to get the best out of democracy in Nigeria, as far as I'm concerned, is active citizenship. The 900 billion probe is a step in the right direction, saying that senators and reps will return project funds. I hope they will. I will have good faith and hope that they will. But I think more importantly is if you give someone access to 100 million or 200 million for 2 years, and there's something called time value of money. So what happens if they are returning the money? Why did they take the money? Why didn't they execute the project? And I think it goes back to the issue of active citizenship. Like I said, we must have close relationship with those people who we, by commission or omission, have elected to be in place of power, to say, you represented me. I understand that there is this budget. Or going to probe, oh, what's the budget for my constituency? What is the rep of my constituency? They've become even more reachable than ever. And I think that that's the place of active citizenship, to constantly, you know, nudge them, because they're also human. I mean, we always take the easy part at the end of the day. So if there's nobody pushing and prodding to say that, oh, these funds that where's our constituency project? What are you doing with it? How have you executed it? The money is either going to sit there and then we're going to wait for maybe someone like ICPC to say, ask them to return the money, which I don't really have faith is going to happen.
Okay, all right. Because of time, we've only got one newspaper more left to go, and because of time, I'm not going to go through all of them. Just the main headline. Let's see if we can bring that up on the screen right now. This day newspaper: Boko Haram kills 30, injures 40 in fresh suicide attacks in Borno. Buhari commiserates with victims. NAF jets hit Sambisa forest, and Zamfara governor turns to Dubai for solution to banditry. So that's that major headline right at the bottom of your screen right now. Boko Haram kills 30 and injures 40 in fresh suicide attacks in Borno. Like I said earlier, we haven't got much time, you know, to talk about it. So, like in a nutshell, your reaction and what your take on this whole...
I think the security situation in the country is not getting any better. I mean, at first we thought that the banditry and the kidnapping in the southwest is a reflection of some of the criminals that have left the north and are looking for soft spots to still continue to perpetrate their evil acts. But now, a Boko Haram attack again, killing 30 and injuring, 40 people is such a sad one at this point in time. I just hope that the security forces are not letting their guards down in, thinking that they finally won the war against the insurgents. I think that you really can't completely, win that war because there's a bit of ideology behind the war. So I think we'll have to continue to fight and be on our toes to ensure that we exterminate this to the barest minimum. And I think it's a continuous fight.
Okay. All right then, Tubosun, thank you very much indeed. That's all time will allow us to take. But we're back tomorrow for a fresh edition of Off the Press. Until then, I remain Tokunbo Taiwo. But before I go, I've got to thank our studio guest, our in-house analyst and reputation, who is the reputation manager, Tubosun Akeju. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so that's it on the program. We're back tomorrow, as I said earlier, same time, same channel, same platform, when we'll be bringing you all of the latest headlines from the national dailies. Until then, I remain Tokunbo Taiwo saying good morning.